Right, hi everyone, welcome to another Rat and Retro video. I'm Sam and behind the camera is
Calli.
And today we are here at my workplace, which is the VW engine company, and we're going to be fitting the EMPI IRS anti-roll bar to the rear of Eleanor 74. Now this design is something that I've been wanting to fit for a while for drifting, helps stiffen up the rear end. So we'll get the parts out of the box, lay them all out, see what we've got, and then start the assembly onto the vehicle itself. Okay, so I purchased this kit from Heritage Parts Centre. Essentially the fitting is quite easy compared to the swing axle version. The swing axle version you actually have to drill into the frame horns and do like a U-bolt setup, whereas this is kind of a little bit more conventional bolt-on kit, I would call it. It uses a band strap around the actual rear torsion tube to support this urethane bush, and then essentially that grips onto the actual sway bar itself. The end link in which actually connects to the suspension components is via this L bracket, which goes onto your spring plate. It's got 3 holes. You don't have to use the 3rd middle hole. It depends on what actual A-arm you use and spring plate configuration. So on my vehicle, I'm going to be using just the top and bottom, and then essentially that hooks underneath the spring plate and A-arm, and then you have the pinch bolt set up like so with various bushes and spacers that essentially give it a little bit of give, so it's not a completely stiff setup, because obviously things do have to rotate and move, which is quite vital. So on assessment, the parts are pretty good. I'm not going to bother painting any of it because essentially, even though it's cab plated and it will still slightly rust, it's only going to twist and it will crack the paint, so there's no point doing that. So let's get it all fitted on the vehicle and see what we have. So as I said, I'm going to only be using these top 2 bolts, which line up obviously depending on the configuration of spring plate and sort of A-arm, will depend on what configuration you use. Make sure, and it does say in the instructions, but it's always good to do this, is good practice anyway, make sure you mark the bottom and the top of the torsion arm and A-arm as a collective, so that you always know where your tracking point is. If you're doing it as a pre-existing vehicle that's running true, make sure you mark so that you actually know where to put it all back to. So what I'm going to do is loosen off these pinch bolts. I'm going to assess whether I need to put longer ones in or not, because this plate is quite thick. We'll get that bolted together and see how the rest of the kit fits, so carry on. Okay, so the last thing to do on this kit is to allow the suspension to rest under its sort of driving state and then to tighten up the actual urethane mounts and band clamps as well. So I've left them partially loose. Now that the car's sort of settled and drive forward a bit and backwards, we'll tighten them up, and then essentially the car will be ready to go. So we'll crack on with that. Okay, so the kit is now complete. That, I've got to be honest, is one of the easiest bolt-on sort of rear suspension components I've seen in a little while. It seems to be built together really well. I'm going to see how the urethane holds up against the British weather, because obviously we know sometimes that can be a little bit sceptical. But essentially I'm going to see how the car behaves, review back with hopefully some drifting stuff, which will help and stiffen up the rear end, as I've said. But essentially thank you to Heritage Parts Centre for supplying that, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.